welcome to Policing TV. I'm delighted to be joined by re-elected Police and Crime Commissioner for Kent, Matthew Scott. Matthew, re-elected, elected and re-elected now for your third term, I believe. Congratulations for that. Now, let's start. Tell us about that election campaign and what you were hearing from Kent residents as you were knocking on doors and otherwise engaging in that re-election campaign.
Well, it was a very interesting campaign. I mean, obviously, being in the world of crime, policing, victims, and justice, it's a very different conversation on the doorstep, perhaps, than one you would normally have at election time. Whilst we did have some local elections at the same time here in Maidstone and Tunbridge Wells, where people were talking about important local traffic issues, waste collections, planning matters, the PCC election, aside from that, is a very specific issue. So it's a very different conversation, but one that people were very willing to engage with. When you knock on the door and you talk about the Police and Crime Commissioner election, people were engaging, they were interested, they wanted to know. Whether they knew you or not, they wanted to understand what it was you would do for them, because it's a very, very personal issue. Whether you've been a victim of crime or you haven't, it's something that directly impacts upon people's daily lives. So there was a real interest in it. And I was finding people were separating out the national from the local. So where obviously things are very difficult for the party nationally at the moment, our position in the polls is quite low. I have every confidence that
Conservatives, the Conservative, I should point out for our international viewers that Matthew, you stand as a Conservative, and the Conservatives have been nationally in power for a little while. I'm sure that our international audience will also be familiar with some of the challenges that there are nationally. So forgive me, carry on.
Of course. So, as Conservatives, the polls are not in our favour at the moment. I'm sure we can claw some of that gap back before a general election later this year. But people were willing to differentiate between the two, and you have that conversation with them saying, well, I'm not voting Conservative, but I'm going to vote for you. Or I'm not voting for the councillors, but I'm voting for you. It was really interesting to see how different the response was. And some of that was reflected in the local council election results, where sadly we lost control of Tunbridge Wells Borough Council. However, I won the popular vote in Tunbridge Wells. So people were differentiating between the two. But in terms of what people were interested in, it was two or three things, really. It was, I want to see a police officer on the beat. If I phone the police, I want them to investigate my crime. Those were the two things which came up time and time again. There was very little else, actually, that came up. That was the common thing. And that's what I put at the heart of my campaign pledges.
So this will be your third term. The 4 years ahead will be your third term of office. What do you have planned what do you intend to deliver over that period? And what will you bring from the experience in those first two terms of office that will enable you to, if I can put it this way, do even better in your third term?
Well, my hope for the third term, I mean, you can't predict international events, of course, but is that there is now, I believe, some consistency. Myself and the Chief Constable, our terms of office, subject to him being extended, of course, are going to run concurrently now. So over the next 4 years, I'm hoping to retain the Chief Constable, of course, but it would be me and him together for the next 4 years, which means that you can do an awful lot working together. My priorities are really straightforward. I didn't make any complicated pledges at the election. I said I want to deliver our new neighbourhood policing model, which we're rolling out at the moment, going back to a model where wards have access to a named PC. That's already about 75% done, but we're going to finish delivering that model. So I made a neighbourhood policing pledge that's going to be the fundamental basis of everything that we do. And that was a big change that we started in my last term that we're going to finish this term. But my pledges other than that were really clear: cut crime, support victims, and build trust. And that message resonated. people want crime to go down. They want their crimes solved and investigated as victims. And when it comes to trust, I think there is more trust out there for the police than I think, maybe is reported. Last year, on a scale of 1 to 10, on average, the result we got back was 6. So it wasn't disastrous. It wasn't fantastic, but it wasn't disastrous either, that some of the media reports might have you believe. And there, I think, are a lot more people out there who support the police and who take an active interest in policing, whether that's through their community or their community groups, or even things like the sheer number of people who still take a big interest in policing documentaries and Fly on the Wall series. So building trust is going to be a key part of my campaign, and we're going to do that by actually going out and having conversations with people. So that was my campaign. Really simple, really easy to understand, I hope. And I hope that's what people have given me a mandate for.
Tell our international audience a little bit about the relationship, please, between the elected Police and Crime Commissioner and the Chief Constable, who is appointed by the Police and Crime Commissioner. Just briefly, by way of context, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they are two very different roles. Internationally, I know that you have police commissioners in some countries who are responsible for their police forces. Here in this country, it's the Chief Constable who delivers on a day-to-day basis, but the Police and Crime Commissioner who is overall responsible for the efficient and effective delivery of policing. So as PCC, I appoint the Chief Constable. I hold them to account for their performance and their delivery against the priorities that I set for them. I'm responsible for all of the budget, so the amount we levy in tax and the amounts we get from central government. And I also commission services for victims of crime as well. So it's a very big and very broad role. But there is a very clear dividing line between that of the police commissioner here and that of the Chief Constable. So I cannot direct him on policing operations. It might have been politically advantageous for me to say, right, during the election, I want 20 police officers patrolling every inch of Sevenoaks at all times. There is a very good reason why we don't do that here. That's political interference, and the law makes that absolutely clear that we can't even be suggesting things like that, because the chiefs have to be operationally responsible for what they are doing. I liken it sort of chairman of the board and chief executive. The chief executive runs the company, the chair holds them to account and appoints the chief executive. It's a very, very different role here, but I think importantly, it's elected. I'm responsible for a budget of nearly £500 million, 40% of which is collected through people's direct taxation, their council tax. So you have someone who is responsible for looking after your money, someone who you can vote in or vote out if they're misusing it, or you're not getting the value for money that you want. No taxation without representation, a very important principle, which I think PCCs are embodying.
Turn from Kent, you're the elected third term now, Kent Police and Crime Commissioner, to the national, the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, which is the body comes together with your police and crime commissioner colleagues from elsewhere, with mayors who have policing responsibility and others. We won't go into the detail of that, but suffice it to say that the APCC, the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, is a body that you contribute to and sit on that provides a national perspective. Now, you, in the last term of office, had the APCC portfolio on procurement, I believe. Can you tell us a little about that, about whether you would hope to retain that? The makeup, there has been quite a sea change in the makeup of the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, the PCCs. We won't again go into that, but suffice it to say that the APCC will be collectively looking again at these portfolios. When you wish to hang on to the procurement portfolio, have you an interest in other areas as you move into your third term of office?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're correct. I do lead for PCCs on procurement and commercial activity. Back in 2019, I was appointed chair of the National Commercial Board, which was the forerunner to a company we established as PCCs with the Home Office and Chief Constables called Blue Light Commercial. The idea being that we work together as one voice in policing to the market. So we work together to procure vehicles, to procure uniform and accessories, that we do temporary staff and contingent labour. But gradually over the coming years, we will do more of these procurement exercises together rather than 43 times or 20 times. It means that we get better pricing. We can also work together on better quality, because it's not just buying the cheapest item, it's about the whole commercial life cycle. I'll just give you one example. There's no point buying 1,000 batons for £2 if they're going to break every week and you have to constantly replace them. So it's about looking at the whole life cycle cost of things to make sure you're getting value for money. So, it might be that you spend £10 on your batons, but you'll actually not be spending the money on replacing them 5 or 6 times each. And that's a really crude example, but it just sort of demonstrates sort of the more sensible thinking you need to do about these. But also it means that you give your workforce equipment that actually works. We've seen arguments in the past around the amount that policing spends on body-worn video cameras, and the press will say, well, why don't you buy these ones that we got really cheap off of eBay? Because the first time you drop them on the floor, they'll break, and then you have to replace them, and you have to keep replacing them because they don't survive the rough and tumble of policing. So it's a really good project. We've saved well over £100 million together with police forces. The direct benefit we have delivered as Blue Light Commercial so far in the last 4 years has been £68 million, cashable savings and revenue generated for policing, and that's only going to increase as we do more together. But there's a link there to some other things that I want to do going forward. I take a keen interest in the special constabulary. I recently discovered that my great-grandfather was a special constable after the Second World War in Hertfordshire. So it's a little bit personal. But, I think we are missing a real opportunity with specials in this country. Not them themselves, because they're great. But I don't think nationally there's been the leadership or the direction which has enabled our special constabularies to grow and to flourish. I'm having a meeting very soon with the Minister to talk about these things, because I think we are wasting a tremendous opportunity to empower these fantastic volunteers and recruit more into our special constabularies, because they add so much value. They are absolutely fantastic individuals who volunteer their free time to help us. So we should help them by giving them the training, giving them the kit, giving them the support that they want. And hopefully that will lead to better retention, because in the last 10 years, numbers have fallen off a cliff, and not because of the Uplift programme. Numbers have been steadily reducing for some time, but we can retain the ones that we've got, and then that will hopefully lead to better recruitment in the future as well. So I'm hoping to look at that, but as part of a more wider workforce portfolio. I have a lot of family in policing, both current and retired. And one of the things that personally I've taken a keen interest in is their terms, their conditions and their welfare. So making the case for proper pay rises for police officers funded by the Treasury and the Home Office, so they actually get a fair wage for what they do. I think it's lagging behind somewhat what I think they deserve. I've always argued that as a minimum, police officers should get at least inflation as a base point, and then we should be making the argument for greater allowances and other things elsewhere, because I think it's only fair, given that they don't have the same industrial rights as anybody else. So I think there's some really big things I want to do nationally in that space, and I think I can be an effective voice in doing so.
What I'm hearing there is continuing interest in the APCC procurement portfolio, a developing interest in the workforce portfolio, and also within that, a keen interest in developing volunteers and specials within Kent and indeed nationally. That's a great opportunity, Matthew, and I'm sure you'll realise why I'm going to take this opportunity. I and Policing TV are currently filming in Scotland some detailed features on volunteering in policing, including police specials, and including what here in Scotland are called youth volunteers, and elsewhere in England and Wales are called police cadets. We have an international symposium today and tomorrow, where also we're recording with some, I think, 15 countries represented, and a women in the special constabulary recording coming up over this coming weekend, where that's my plug for the forthcoming policing TV content on police volunteers and specials. Let me return to our conversation, Matthew. I just want now to close and to thank you for that contribution, the contributions you've made, and the time that you've just given to policing TV. Thank you so much for that. I very much hope to return, as I have been in Kent in the future, to pick up with progress that your office, the force, and your wider policing partners are making. But in closing, can I wish you and those that I've just mentioned all the very best over the coming 4 years of your third term of office. Matthew Scott, Kent Police and Crime Commissioner, thank you very much indeed.
Really appreciate it. Thank you, and look forward to working with you over the next 4 years.